Yeah, we can throw this up. I thought this was pretty crazy, and also proof that like we basically now have proof that like Jon Stewart is like as left you can get when it comes to mainstream media.
Because he's
Uh,
huge. He's very popular.
yeah, he's like one of the most respected people that could genuinely be considered a progressive. And don't get me wrong, Zach and I have had our issues with Jon Stewart. We've talked about them here. We've done segments, but compared to Don Lemon or something,
No,
like
obviously.
he's
Another
way
unemployed
more.
man.
Yeah, true. Also unemployed. Maybe they can start a
He was
show
past
together.
his prime.
Right. So there's a couple interesting things about this. According to reports, the problem with Jon Stewart has effectively been canceled over editorial disagreements, specifically relating to China
China.
and artificial intelligence that were a major concern for Apple. Through new episodes of the show, or sorry, though new episodes of the show were scheduled to begin shooting in just a few weeks, staffers learned today that production had been halted, which means that this is like, this was not something that was planned out.
It's
Clearly,
recent. Yeah.
yeah, they seemingly gave the show a green light to continue, but then when they realized what conversations they planned to have, they were like, they got cold feet. Don't want to have these conversations about artificial intelligence in China, which is so stupid. Like, who cares? Like, from Apple's perspective, I'm sorry, but who cares? Like, what, a couple 100,000 people are going to watch the YouTube episode of Jon Stewart watching about AI and how it's going to take jobs, and then 300,000 or 400,000 people are going to watch his episode where he talks about how it's really, the conditions in China are really exploitative for manufacturing or something like that. But like, who cares? Like, why would you get rid of Jon fucking Stewart, one of the biggest names, one of the most beloved names in media? If you're Apple, this was such a get for Apple, by the way. Who's still really working on building up their streaming service, Apple TV Plus. The thing about Apple TV Plus that people don't realize is that it's currently not one of the biggest streaming services. By the way, speaking of Killers of the Flower Moon, I think they were the ones that bankrolled Scorsese's latest movie. But anyway, Apple TV Plus is currently not one of the bigger streamers. Like, it's not really necessarily competitive with Netflix, for example, or Disney Plus, but it will be soon because Apple in general has so much more money than literally all of these other streaming companies combined. Like, Apple makes Disney look like a small company. There's actually been rumors that Apple is going to buy the Disney brand, like literally will buy up Disney in the coming years. So it's a massive company. And as far as building their streaming service went, getting Jon Stewart was actually a huge, huge get for a relatively new streaming service without a ton of its own content. Speaking of Apple TV, I'm super excited for their upcoming Godzilla show, which comes out next month. I'm about to have to pay like $6 a month to get access to that shit. But anyway, I think this is really stupid. Like I said, from their perspective, obviously it's censorious. Obviously, from a freedom of speech perspective, this is ridiculous as well. But also just from a business perspective, like, why would you get rid of Jon fucking Stewart? You can't handle him being critical of AI, something that basically, I'm sure these segments wouldn't have been anything that much more radical than what like John Oliver talks about. John Oliver does a bunch of substantive shows where he breaks down like, China or AI, stuff like that. I really can't imagine that whatever Jon Stewart wanted to do was much more radical than that.
Yeah, I just think it wasn't probably really about the AI in China. I think that might have been the surface level of it, if especially because it came recently. Like, it's not out of nowhere. Like, what big
True.
issue would have prompted that? But do you know what they might have been thinking about? The
True.
fact that this is a 2015 article. Many Palestinians see him as their beacon, a man who speaks the truth in a media where misdirection is the norm. When he left The Daily Show, Palestinians bid Jon Stewart a fond farewell. Apart from the constant aerial bombardments and denials of our rights by Israel, we Palestinians have been victim of the American news media. And anyway, this dude's been outspoken in his and as somebody who I'm pretty sure he's Jewish himself, right? Like, that's that honestly, bro, what I feel like is the real like anti-Semitism in media is the fact that if you're like a Jewish person and you speak out for Palestinians, you will get fucking taken off the air immediately,
Absolutely.
bro. Like,
It's crazy.
that's exactly what happened to Katie Halper, right? Like, she had a forceful ass presentation condemning Israel's violence, and then boom, what happened to her? She got ripped from the airways over on the Hill because then the one, you know fucking thing that they have to hurl back at you no longer works. It's like, bro, well, you must be an anti-Semite. It's like, bro, I'm not an anti-Semite. I'm fucking Jewish. Like, don't tell me that. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
You can't fucking,
And I
use
just
that,
looked it
like,
up, by the way. His
cudgel.
family members are, in fact, Ashkenazi Jewish immigrants.
Yeah,
so-
see, I guarantee, bro, that shit, that is genuine, undeniable anti-Semitism, and obviously, like, fucking has to be called that. But I wouldn't be surprised if that had something to do with it because of how fucking potent and how effective he is, and how he, like, it's kind of like Bernie Sanders, right? Like, think about how much they would have Jeremy Corbyn Bernie Sanders if he hadn't had, like, a Jewish background. You know what I mean? I think
they tried to. They called him a self-hating Jew and shit.
I know, but that shit never catches on because people are just like, fuck you, you dickhead. Like, you know what I mean? Like, nobody wants to hear that from somebody. That's not the same as like them being able to convince people that you're like an actual hateful person. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, it took off way more with Corbyn in the UK because it was like, you know what I mean?
Right. But yeah, I think you're probably onto something there, Zach. I feel stupid now because that seems like the obvious.
I'm pretty sure that's exactly what it is.
This has
Like,
to be about
I mean,
Israel. There's no way whatever he was going to say about China was so crazy.
He's been saying shit about China forever. You know what I mean? I'm just like, no, I think that especially if it's recently, I'm just like, I don't
also,
know.
this
That's
article
what,
does say the topics included China, Israel, and artificial intelligence. The article I just had up on screen only said China and AI. This one's throwing in Israel. So maybe CNN was like, we fucking see what you're doing, bro.
and we support it, right?
Yeah.
Anyway, I think that in my estimation, that's probably what it is.
I am interested, Zach, in what you think about Jon Stewart should do going forward, because obviously the big question is, should he try to seek out another similar gig with another corporate media entity, or should he go independent and try to either just, like, I don't know, like start a YouTube channel or something?
Start a new network and hire some enterprising young comrades with a knack for getting wild and crazy on the microphone. Now you're onto something, Gavin. I think that's exactly what he should do. Exactly what he should do.
Hopefully you heard what I was saying yesterday about his chances if he ran for president. Not one of us was not so keen.
Hey, man, we all need somebody who has the courage to voice their dissent in our group and in our candidacy, right? So if you've seen the West Wing, they always had one or two pessimists lying around.
But yeah, what do you think he should do, Zach? Do you think he'll go independent? Do you think he should go independent? Do you think they'll be successful, or what do you think?
He might actually just retire for real.
That's very possible.
I think that's probably the most likely situation for a while. I think he just lets it go, and I mean, how old is Jon Stewart? Let me look.
I think he's like 50 something.
He's got to be older than 50.
Probably.
He's 60. Okay.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So I mean, yeah, he might be done. He might just do something out of his house and do like a fucking like pod. I mean, I don't know. He might just be done. He might just do like fucking sets whenever he wants to. Be in a movie with his friends whenever he wants to.
He tried to direct for a while. I don't think that really worked out.
Yeah.
Because he made that other movie too. Remember, like wasn't it with like Steve Carell, where it was supposed to be like a political satire, and then everyone just like agreed that it was really mediocre.
Anything negative about Jon Stewart, I don't engage with. I'm like, what happened? What? Based? Yeah, based. John, I'm a based guy. No. Yeah, I do remember that. His stint into directing's not a gig for everybody. You know what I mean? I don't know if I'd be a good director. I don't know. I got a lot of shit going on. Sometimes the product would look like crap and you get blamed for it, and you're like, fuck, man, I really did try. You know? I can just see that. That's one of the things that's always in the back of my mind. Like, we're always like viciously attacking filmmakers, but like I could totally see just like
fucking up massively.
Yeah, and just being like, oh man, I wanted it to be good, bro. Trust me, I wanted this shit to come together. I did not want this to be.
It was way different.
No, it was like one of those things where like I don't know. It just I kept waiting for it to come together, and we kept shooting, and then the fucking expenses kept racking up, and then the producers said I was fired, and I don't know. Eventually, it went straight to video. You can watch it on Amazon Prime for free, like, you
know. That's hilarious. Yeah. Hopefully we haven't seen the end of Jon Stewart, though. I genuinely think that, you know, despite his occasionally cringy takes, that he is one of the best voices in mainstream media, always has been, at least for my adult life. So, I would definitely miss his presence. And one of my favorite things about his show with Apple, the problem with Jon Stewart, was the interview aspect of it. Like, he did some excellent, like, in-depth interviews that I don't think he really had the ability or the time to do on his old show on TV. But the longer form interview format with the problem with Jon Stewart, I think really gave him an ability to shine in a way that he previously had not been able to. And it really exposed the fact that he's like one of the left's most like talented debaters, really capable of exposing an opponent, exposing their ignorance, and truly besting them intellectually. And that's going to be I think, the biggest thing that we're going to miss out on now that this show has been canceled, because pretty much every time he did one of those interviews, it was guaranteed to be great content. And unfortunately, it doesn't look like we're going to be getting much more of that. So like I said, hopefully somewhere else picks him up or he goes independent. The problem with going independent is that it does become harder to get access to some of those like government officials and stuff that we saw him get access to.
Although I doubt
Apple.
Jon Stewart has a problem with that. He's his own name in his own right. You know what I mean? If Mark Maron can get fucking access independently to Barack Obama, then I think that Jon Stewart could independently get access to whoever the fuck he wants to.
That's true. It's just so much easier. Even if I think even if you're Jon Stewart, if you're trying to get in touch with like, some actual employee of a government or like an official.
Oh, I totally disagree with that. This dude has fucking total like massive resources to hire somebody that knows exactly how to get in touch with all of them. And those people are going to want the clout boost. Like these are random people that work with government agencies. They're not God, right? Like they're like these people want to be reached out to.
When you see like, Apple is reaching out or like, CNN, fill in the blank. I do
world
think that
famous
gives you
fucking comedian Jon Stewart.
Comedian is not the same as well established.
I mean, like Joe Rogan gets access to world class people all the time. The fucking Breakfast Club has all these fucking people on all the time. You know what I mean?
That's true. I'm not saying he won't be able to get on anyone cool. I just mean like with that corporate apparatus, like able to arrange those sort of interviews and with that access just so easily available. I just doubt that we will see as many more. I'm not saying that he couldn't set it up on his own if he wanted to like that and just completely recreate the structure of the problem with Jon Stewart independently. But that would just take so much money to produce and so many resources to, have that sort of an operation at the ready. So I'm just saying I doubt we'll see it.
I mean,
and in the same way that like when, Crystal and Sagar went independent from Breaking Points, you saw their amount of access dramatically go down to people. Obviously, they're not as big as Jon Stewart, but I just think that having that corporate news backing just automatically makes people more likely to agree to an interview just because they think it's going to be like, more softball questions or, oh, this is a corporate interview. Okay, I'm safe here versus, oh, this is an independent person. They're not tied down to a corporate structure. I don't know what I'm going to get asked. Clearly with Apple, he can't ask certain questions. He can't interview certain people. So they're more likely to grant him that access. That's kind of the way I feel about it.
I think that might be like a tinfoil hat for me. I think that being a millionaire with a massive fucking amount of money and extreme connections to every end of the fucking entertainment business after doing a decade-long show where he, was involved in politics and also his lobbying efforts and his activism for the 9/11 first responders and all of that. I think that he could easily set up something honestly far bigger than what Breaking Points did. Like if he chose to. I agree with you that he probably won't choose to. I think he'll probably just ride off into the sunset and maybe write a book or maybe do like occasional appearances and like have a good time on things. He might. I think at the most we could probably expect from him is that he sets like a Bill Maher kind of like after hours kind of like thing in his basement, and then he does that like every once in a while until he gets bored.